Hey folks, this is Philip with the Everyday Fighter podcast, where we share stories and insights from everyday fighters just like you. Today I'm talking with Liam Sorrell. Liam is from Australia. He is a husband and a father of two and a former amateur boxer. We get into his start with boxing at a very young age and how he was inspired into it and grew to really enjoy it, and then leaving it for a bit and coming back to it as an adult, actually getting into his first amateur bout. So a lot of great things that Liam shares, and I'm looking forward to you hearing it. But before we do that, let me jump into our episode spotlight. As a reminder, these spotlights are unsponsored. These folks have no idea who I am or that I'm doing this. They're just individuals or organizations that I feel need some. They're just individuals and organizations that resonate with me, and I just like to give them a bit more attention. And today, I wanted to share with you Special Books by Special Kids. This is an organization that started with a teacher, special education teacher, and he found a way to connect with his own students by setting up a video camera and asking them questions about things that they'd like to do, things that they would want to put into a book that they'd like to share with the world. And he found that his students really resonated with that. They really took a liking to it. So he decided after a bit that this is something that he wanted to do with other people in the world as well. So he's traveled all around the country, in the United States, all around the world, interviewing people, adults as well as children with special needs, special circumstances, and puts them on camera and just has real conversations with them and shares them with the world. And it was really inspiring to me. I encourage you to check them out. The community that they've built online has been amazing. They've been able to help out a tremendous amount of people that they've interviewed along the way as well because of the community that they've built. So you can check them out at sbsk.org. That's Special Books by Special Kids, but sbsk.org, and learn more about them. So that is our episode spotlight. Let's jump into our chat with Liam Sorrell.
Western suburbs of Melbourne, in on the east coast of Australia. Born in 1984, so I was a 90s kid growing up.
Great year. 84 is a great year, man.
Yeah. You too, then?
No. I was actually 74, but one of my
you don't look that.
One of my good genes, I'd say. I can't take credit for it. I'll credit my heritage, but. Real quick aside, 1984, I remember that year. It was a great year, but even more so because Van Halen's 1984, their album came out there with Jump on it. And that was the first time I ever did a lip sync in a contest at school. And I can't remember exactly how we did, but that was like the first time I actually broke out into doing something kind of public performance that way. But it was 1984, man. That's what I remember. So,
and funny with that song, Jump, it was in year 9 or 10. A group of friends of mine, they started an 80s cover band, and that was the song that they always used to.
Shut up.
That I always used to play every lunchtime when we were just chilling in the music space. That was the song that always came on. Yeah, so
good.
It's playing in my head right now.
It's hard not. I mean, like to hear it, you can't. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Anyway, man, that was my aside. But
so yeah, that was so another good part of '84 was in June 12. I was born. So there you go. And yeah, so I grew up in the western suburbs of Melbourne. It's pretty standard upbringing. The middle class type lifestyle. Had a really good close group of friends growing up, which was handy. Playing out in the street until the lights come on, and then see you later, see you tomorrow, and inside for dinner, that kind of thing. So pretty standard kind of stuff. Went to school that was just around the corner from my house, so I was able to walk to school every day, which is really handy. Nice. And developed some really cool relationships and memories along that line. I first moved into my teens. I was 13. Is when a friend of the family used to come around to the house and do some work and just have some conversations with my mum and dad over a cup of coffee or a tea in the evenings. And it turned out that he was a boxer. And so I was playing basketball for most of my life, from like 6 until that age, about 12 or 13. And it just came out that that's what he was doing. And he said, "Why don't you come along? And I'll pick you up tomorrow and we'll go." And it wasn't really even a question. It was just like, "I'll pick you up tomorrow. Be ready." And so and he was, I knew enough about him at that stage that you didn't say no. All right, I'll be there 10 minutes early. And so he Dean Parfrey is his name. And he came and picked me up the next day, whenever it was, and took me out to this gym. It was called Bella's Boxing Gym. It was run by Meta Bella, who Albanian guy. Him and his brother both were pro boxers in overseas first, and then ended up in Australia. Don't know exactly a lot of their history. I remember seeing all the photos on the walls around the gym, medals that they won. I'm pretty sure they were went Commonwealth Games, and Meta definitely won some Australian titles. But I'll probably stand to be corrected, and Dean hears this. But it was the old school gym. It was in the back of his farm property. It was dusty. Every time you hit the bag, the dust would come off the top of it. But it was my first taste of what a boxing gym would be, and it was probably the best experience, still one of the best experiences of my life, because it was that, every time you walk into a gym now, if you don't get that leather smell, and that sweat, that stale sort of smell, it's just not the same. It just doesn't. It's too clinical, and it doesn't have that authentic feel of what a boxing gym feels like. And this gym had it. It's the same with going into a like a water sports surfing shop or something and smelling that. I've got a real emotional connection with wetsuit material. So from I've been spending most of my childhood down at the beach wearing a wetsuit, and then scuba diving as well, doing that a lot in my adult years. That smell of that wetsuit material just takes me back to the ocean. And so whenever I smell those, smell that leather from the bag or the gloves, that real stale smell from my wraps, because they've never been cleaned before. But every now and then, if I'm just missing the gym, I'll just smell those, and it just takes me back.
Take me back, man.
Yeah, take me back. But that's So that's a real fond memory of mine. Was that first experience in the gym with Dean, and I'm always grateful for Dean for picking me up and taking me there. It was really, really fun time. There was a lot of Aussie and Victorian champs that came through that gym, and I was fortunate enough to be a sparring partner for a few of those guys I spent about 3 years at that gym. So really good opportunity. But it was being a young teenager too, you're seeing the adults there who are they've been working in the gym for a long time, real solid guys. And it was the western suburbs of Melbourne. It was the end of the train line type thing. So there was a few rough heads around. And a few of them were at that gym. And it was really eye-opening to see some of the sparring that was going on in that gym. And it was just like, those guys are strong, I remember being this, I still am tall and lanky. But as a 13 tall and lanky kid, looking at these guys that actually have some muscle and stuff, you go, I'm not going to go in the ring with them. But you ended up doing that. That was just part of the package as well. You get in there and you have a go. They obviously don't treat you as hard as they do with the adults, but it was a good, if you didn't have your hand up, you'd feel it. And there was a couple of times I'd come back from a couple of days after some sparring sessions with massive. One time I had this massive. It was probably like the size of a dinner plate bruise on my side of my ribs. And I remember going to Meta afterwards, or a couple of days after that, and saying, I got this massive bruise. And he knew exactly why. And because I was holding my elbows too close to my ribs. And every time someone hit me with a body shot, my elbow would connect with my ribs there and would just slowly start to welt and bruise. It was pretty full on. Plus they were pretty solid hits. So, it was all these things just, you learn over time. It was really, really good experience. Yeah.
Wow, man. So you're there for 3 years. That first part of boxing was 3 years. Wow, man. Wow. What was that like for you to get exposed to that kind of thing at that age? Because you didn't have. Did you have any like martial arts or fighting experience prior to 13? No, before
nothing.
You actually set foot in there.
No real experience with it at all. I saw a couple of fights at school, but no real experience with any martial arts at all. I think actually, no, thinking about it now, I did maybe 2 or 3 sessions of karate or taekwondo or something when I was maybe 8 or 9. But I remember the gym was in some sort of gymnasium. It was really cold. And I didn't really like it for some reason. There was something that just didn't gel with me. But apart from that, nothing like the sort of what I experienced at that gym.
So, I mean, because as you described it, I immediately was thinking Rocky IV, like in the farmhouse and all this, like just very, not fancy. It's all about work kind of a thing in there, which it sounds like that's kind of the attitude in this place, yeah.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, just to expand on that too, is so just outside the gym, before you even step foot in the gym, you turn up, you leave your stuff at the door, and you go and do laps of the field just next to the warehouse or the gym. And so it was a big square field. And on one side of the field he had a little pond with some ducks and stuff. And occasionally they would get through the fence, or they would come through to the fence and start trying to peck at you as you ran past. So you'd have to, like, I wasn't really a big fan of birds. I'm still not a big fan of birds. So I would sort of make a little bit of a detour around that section. But you're dodging cow pats along the way. And, so that was, your way of, I suppose, his way of, increasing your mobility and your foot flexion and all that kind of stuff. So it was,
let's go with that.
But, that was, it was now that I think now most of that area is all built up in housing estates and stuff. But, back then you could see for miles, and there was horses and cattle and all kinds of things around. So that was another part just that really gets that sort of, that farm style. It's just no frills. Yeah.
Right. Well, there's no doubt as to what the focus is, right, going on there. It's not to relax. There's nothing comfortable necessarily about it, from the workout to even the smells and what you got to be careful of stepping in.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow, man. Were you apprehensive at all, like getting in that car and taking the drive? with Dean and like, because it sounded like it was, as you indicated, it sounded more of like an ultimatum than a suggestion.
Yeah, I think it was. There's definitely nerves. That unexpected. What's happening, but a level of trust as well. I didn't think that there was ever any doubt that it was for my best. It was going to be for my best in the long run. So definitely didn't have any doubt that it was a good thing. Those, until you start to develop some relationships within the gym, it was always that, I suppose, that feeling of, I think for me it was like we see with a lot of different things. Is this the thing for me, or am I supposed to be here? Do I fit in here? And then it was, until you start developing those connections, and the trainer met her from the very start. Maybe because I came with Dean, it was like that he sort of vouched for me. He made me feel at home from the start, which was really helpful, because that obviously develops that trust with your trainer as well, and that's what you really want. You don't want a trainer that's gonna that you don't really vibe with, or when he puts you in the ring sparring with someone that you feel like he's giving you a bum steer, and maybe you're not getting you haven't been given the right tools or whatever. So that was a big help from the start. But definitely nervous with the amount of people that were in there. It was probably a regular 15 to 20 people that were there.
Wow.
And so, but all ages, which was really cool. But I think that once that trust was built with the other guys as well, so it's a couple of sparring guys. That's a couple of names just came through my head then, but I've just lost them. I'll get them in a sec. But a couple of those guys, like we would spar. Anthony Comito, there's one. Him and I, we went to school together as well, so it was really good connection. We didn't know each other before that at school, but that was a really cool connection that was made. So those kinds of things. Then it became like I want to go there. When are you picking me up? When are we going? There was none of that nerves anymore. It was excitement to get there. Yeah. Especially. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, especially with once I got my confidence inside the ring as well, and once I knew how to use all the gear, it was a matter of getting in there and getting the work done.
How long did it take you figure, to get to that point of like kind of nerves and still trying to find your feet to, like, as you described, I want to go. I need to go.
Yeah, that's it's going to play funny buggers with my memory now. But it's hard to say. I think, mate, probably only like the connections, maybe only a few months, maybe max. Just with some of the turnover that maybe went through. But yeah, I think as far as my skill level, it was and the confidence with some of the equipment. I mean, equipment, not just using, understanding when to use the heavy bag as opposed to the the soft bag, or when I can use the I used to watch guys bounce on the trampoline while using the speedball. So when it was appropriate for me to do that combination as opposed to just stand there and learn how to use the speedball first. So it was, I think maybe that was, that was an ongoing process. There was never a point, I think, where that was comfortable, because like anything, the more you learn a skill, the more you realize how much you need to continue to learn, or how much there's still to learn. And yeah, every time I went into the gym, I found some new piece of equipment that I'd never even seen before. And maybe that's because it was just not within the realm of what I needed to actually be focusing on at the time. It was like you're using skipping rope, speedball, and that soft bag. And then as you progress, you start other things. You go, well, I'm doing this all right. What's that thing over there? Let's go have a look at that. So that was ongoing. Yeah.
So it didn't sound like you were ever in a position where you're thinking, I don't want to go. It was just like you're going, but then it progressed to I want to go now. Like the level of desire to continue to go back to the place just kept on increasing as your confidence increased.
Mm, yeah. And especially as you start to get more confidence, I started to get a bit more ability, and was able to then transfer that into the ring, which then made me a reliable person, because I was going consistently, a reliable person to get in the ring and help some of these guys who were competitively boxing train. So I wasn't just going to hit the bag. I was now a useful resource for these guys training for fights, their amateur fights. So it was that's when I started to develop that real connection with the space as well, because I felt like I'm now becoming part of the woodwork, which is an important feeling, I think, to feel that you're contributing to the bigger picture as opposed to just going in there to get fit yourself.
Like you were, much like the equipment that was in there already helping to shape you, you were helping to shape these guys, particularly the ones that were going to kind of bigger things, like, going to, getting ready for the competitions, getting ready for whatever else, beyond just what you had inside the gym.
Yeah, and I think it took me a while, long past that time I left that gym, before I realized that I may have had some positive impact to those guys and their training. I just considered myself a punching bag for most of the time. And because I think that's what my body felt. It was,
okay, fair enough.
I felt like I was a punching bag for the most part. Because a lot of these guys, there's one guy I just really want to remember his name, hopefully before the end of this. But there were guys that were just so skilled at my age as well, and younger as well. So Meta, the trainer, his brother's name was Nuri, and Nuri's son ended up going pro as well, and he had a really successful run for a long time. And I remember him. We used to spar, but he was when I was like 14, he would have been 7 or 8 or something like that, and he was just non-stop aggressive. He was redhead, fiery redhead, and just was relentless. And for me, I thought, you just go to I'll just play around with him and stuff. He's a little kid. But it wasn't until 10 seconds in, I was like, okay, this kid's legit. But yeah, it was I suppose that feeling of contribution and understanding that I'm not just a boxing bag. I was there for a purpose, to be able to help those guys. I had a good reach. So for some of these other guys that are a bit more stocky and short, more in and under fighters, it was helpful for them to be able to try and get around that reach. And so that was something that I learned early on, was that using that reach to my advantage. And but it took me a long time to realize that I did probably contribute more than what I thought at the time.
So, yeah, because that was the other question I had, because in hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, I was contributing, right? But at the time, feeling like a punching bag, were there ever situations that kind of you're like, is this what, do I want to continue taking this punishment? As opposed to like thinking you're contributing, it's like you're going consistently, yet you're going consistently to of course you're helping other people, but you're taking punishment as well. So were there any kind of doubts, were there any hesitations as part of that process?
Not that I recall. I think I enjoyed it in the back of my mind. It was that first sort of feeling of stepping into manhood almost. Not thinking about it at the time, but looking back at it now. And what I was surrounded with was bigger than me as well. So having those guys that I were watching in the ring, the adults at the time, in between, we would continue to spar, obviously those, 2 or 3 minute rounds. If the guys were taking breaks from hitting the bag, they'd be watching us. And so, you'd hear that constant either criticism or positive feedback coming through. And then when we were having our breaks in between the rounds, the guys would come up, they would stop what they were doing. And I remember they'd come up and saying, you keep dropping that left hand when you're punching that, doing that cross and, or this and that. And so, yeah, there wasn't the actual physical abuse, for lack of a better word, that my body was taking was not really, I don't remember it being a something that was really an issue for me. But I think because I had, although I was in the ring by myself, I felt like I had a bunch of support from everybody in that gym. So I didn't feel like I was going in there just to get beat up. Again, I think it was for everybody recognized that you were going in there and you had taken that step in, and given you props for that too. So it was supportive environment as opposed to just getting in the ring and just, oh, this guy, he'll be good, punch and bag. It was a lot more supportive than that. So it was good.
Well, and that's something that's I think my dog there. I think that's something that's very important to distinguish, right? Because again, you were there to train, not just to train these guys up. You're there to bring yourself up as well, and your gym. That was important to them also. It's not just that it wasn't just a gym for fighters on their way that that they have to support. It's like, well, you're there also, and they want to train you also. So getting that feedback from there constantly kept you in and kept you growing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's it. That's as long as you're moving forward, no matter what it is, it's a positive. So and the environment that you're in, I think, has a big impact on that for sure. And that was what that gym was able to provide for me at the time. And I'm sure it's still. I'm not sure if it's going now, but I would be surprised if it wasn't going now still. But yeah, I no doubt that was the contributing factor. That supportive environment, that continuous development, positive development, is what contributed to the success that the club had with a lot of the fighters that were going through there. Even Dean. So Dean ended up being turning pro, and I think at the end he had close to a dozen pro fights. So yeah, he was an example of that.
Did you have any other of your friends that kind of joined you on this journey? I mean, you mentioned like very close-knit group of friends, your neighbors growing up. You started boxing. Did any of them kind of follow you along in that journey as well?
Well, one of my neighbours who ended up being my best man at my wedding, Brent, he came a couple of times, but he was a footy player, so he like Australian football. So he could definitely hold his own in a fight on the footy field. But yeah, I can't remember for how long, but yeah, he definitely came down for a few sessions, maybe several months. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but yeah, that was. But I mean, I suppose we had that connection already, so that friendship has lasted its time and still is there. But through the journey, no, I don't think that it was anyone that I brought in from outside and said, come along, that I can recall right now. But and just thinking about it, I think it's I think that might have been just because almost a selfish thing, to keep it. I felt like this environment was really good for me, and I was enjoying the people that were there. So that sort of became my crew for a bit in that gym. So we didn't really see each other outside. There was a couple that I knew from school. But there was, I don't know, just I never really went out there and told lots of people. I don't remember that anyway. So, and a lot of that time my school was in another town. It was about 45 minutes drive away. So the friends that I had at school were living mostly over there as well. So it wasn't really that sort of transfer of, it'd be too hard for them to get to there a lot of the time. But I think, looking back, I think I really just liked having that space just to sort of get away and have new people to associate with was fun to do.
Well, I think it's really telling, and that especially around that age, you're getting into your teens, you started, your body's changing and everything. It's like getting to know yourself a bit better. And sometimes part of that is, what can help facilitate that is having a space of your own, where you're away from kind of the familiar, where you're kind of, you have the room to kind of, learn more about yourself, away from the stuff that was familiar to you before you started making those changes. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. You have that sort of, especially in high school, you have that persona that you present a lot of the time, and because you are trying to find out who you are, and you've got so much influence around you all the time. Whereas you know what you're getting when you go to the gym, you know the people there, or everyone, like we said before, you know the purpose of being there. You're not there to stuff around. You're there for a job, and it's all of a sudden you've got these. When you're working with your peer group at school, you've got older guys at the school as well, but they're still trying to figure out their stuff. Whereas when you go into the gym, I found there was a lot of adults there who were probably still trying to sort their shit out as well. But it seemed like that was that male role model that was really important, and I think that's a big thing for a teenage boy anyway, is to be surrounded by real positive, strong male role models as well. And that's if you're not in an environment that has that already, it is a lot more searching, I suppose, for yourself to do, and you have to know that you need to be doing that. Whereas if you've got that environment, it's a big help. And that boxing gym for me for those few years was able to provide that for that, not for everything, but for what it provided to me, physical, discipline, strength, what's actually capable of the human body, was important.
Do you? So I'm wondering, because boxing is not for everybody, especially at that age. I would argue, because it's not easy. There's other sports and things that definitely are not easy as well, but particularly this is in terms of not only getting hit in the face, taking that punishment, but also actually having to do it on somebody else. Did you notice any differences as you started, getting comfortable doing that between you and kind of your friends in terms of, maybe confident, the people that didn't kind of go through the things that you were going through at the gym? Because one of the things you mentioned earlier was very interesting to me. It's part of becoming a man, kind of it's, this, the road to becoming a man almost. And it made me think of kind of a rite of passage, right? Where especially at this age, and, this is very physical, but not everybody has that as part of their development process. They didn't experience that type of kind of rite of passage, or that road to manhood that way. Is that something that that you feel was an advantage for you compared to some other of your friends around your age, that if they didn't have that?
That's a good question. I don't I don't know. I did hang out with a lot of guys that were in sports, in the football, especially Australian football, and they did have those role models as well, because a lot of the guys would train or be involved with the senior teams, which were the adults, and so that would be a regular part of their lives. Whether they had, because you're talking one team of 22 players, so there's a lot of people that are involved in the club. So whether they had that, were able to have that sort of one-on-one connection with some of these guys, I'm not really sure. But yeah, I'm not really sure really if if it was the same. I didn't, when I went to school, after the next day after going to the gym, or after a few months of going to the gym, I don't really think there was any change in my mentality at school. I think confidence went up for sure, but I never got into fights or anything at school. I was able to sort of mix with every different group. There were, the first school I went to, it was an all boys school, so there was that typical fights at the Oval at lunchtime and that kind of stuff, and seeing some of the big kids doing that was not standard, but pretty common. But I was fortunate enough never to really get into any fights at school. But I had that confidence, I think, within me that I was, if it eventuated, I might be able to sort myself out. But for me, I don't think I have been in fights in the past as an adult, and street fighting is definitely not something that I'm built for.
Yeah.
So I think that my nature is not really as a fighter as such. What I like is in the ring, it's there's that camaraderie between you and your sparring partner, and it's technical as opposed to going out there just to hurt somebody just for the sake of it. So I like that. And so when I watch fights and stuff, I really try and pay attention to the technical side of things, and the skill level, as opposed, I've got appreciation for that as opposed to, just the brawlers and stuff, because that never really was something that I enjoyed growing up seeing at school. And I didn't really find that as entertainment at all. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
No, I think it's hard to say. I mean, it's a difficult question, I think, because you never know what's going on inside the other people, and how do you know what's gonna, what you would have been without that. But I think just, I know just for myself, I mean, I never had that kind of rite of passage, as it were, in terms of like that kind of physical challenge, growing up and through my teen years. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I started down my own path, and I absolutely changed there. Kind of interesting though that it's kind of like, well, what if that happened earlier? Because one of the things that stood out for me as well when you're talking is that when you went to the gym, it wasn't just other kids your age. You had a wide range of other people in there, different ages, but also different backgrounds, different reasons for being there, different skill levels. So it wasn't kind of a homogenous type of experience that school can many times be. I mean, everyone's got their own personalities. You talked about people's personas and what they come out with in school, and but it's still fairly, it's everyone's pretty much the same age except for the teachers, and then aside from that, you've got your parents, as an influence there. But so you having that exposure to all those other folks, particularly like older, and as you said, like strong, not only physically strong, but also you have to be mentally strong as well if you're going to be doing that kind of stuff. That's a really unique environment, I think, to grow to come up in. But you can have it in other ways. You mentioned like your footy friends that had a similar type of exposure to older guys as well, in their sport. But I think that's, at least here in the States, that's kind of that's a rarer thing, I think. But is that something that you try to that you're cognizant of, like in with your own kids, like exposing them to other men, like you were, like outside of you? I mean, you had your dad, like but he didn't. I mean, it sounds like he was okay with you going off with Dean and like doing your thing there, and kind of he didn't shelter you and just keep you. Okay, no, you're my son. I'm going to do stuff with you. You're going to learn, right?
Yeah, and that's so Dad's a big sports guy. He it doesn't care. It doesn't matter what. He's not big into motorsports, but any sport that has you still there? Yeah, sorry, lost you there for a sec. So any sport that has a human actually running or jumping or whatever it might be, he's all over it. So that was no question when I said I'm going to go with Dean boxing. And Mum thought I was crazy, but it was something that he was all behind. And as far as my kids are, my kids are only 4 and one's turning 3 in January, so they're still quite young. But we do try and get them out with as many kids as possible. So then try and meet other male role models and stuff as well, which should help. And when we're looking at babysitters or something like that, it's really important to know both parents, because if the kid's dad is a bit off the charts, then it might not be a suitable environment for our kids. Like you do as any parent does, making sure the environment your kid's going to is going to be a safe one and a good one. And as far as that male role model goes, I think it's just me really at this stage, trying to present that to them, and over definitely once they get older. So in the next few years, when they're going to be exposed to more sports and team sports or martial arts or whatever it is, that'll be a focus that I'll be looking at, is the coaching staff or the environment that it is. I know what worked for me. It may not work for them, but I know that sort of that vibe that I would like to at least try and present to them as what's a positive environment, positive male role models, female role models as well, to be able to learn from each, I think is important. And I'll be looking out for that as well as we get them into that area.
You mentioned you stayed at that gym for like 3 years or so. What happened after that? Was there a reason that you left the gym? Was it just the gym you left, or did you leave boxing entirely? How did that work out?
I went to the school I went to at my first 3 years of high school closed down. So I moved from that school to another school, which was in Werribee, which is where the gym was. But it was a completely different environment. It was now a co-ed school. I was coming to that age of, a bit more a different identity, because there's girls there now. And the people that I got involved with at that school were, not really into the sports and stuff. Played basketball, but they were more into. It was kind of like that. Not a gang mentality, but it was just, chests out kind of thing, walking around school, big noting yourself. And I sort of fell into that a little bit. And I just didn't go back to the gym. I don't know. I can't say that's the reason why, but I also started playing Aussie Rules footy as well. That was a couple of guys said, "Why don't you come and play?" Because I was tall, to all of most of the other kids that were playing. So I was a perfect fit for one position at least on the ground, and started playing that for a couple of years. So that sort of took up 3 days a week for me. But I think looking back, it is one of those things. It was fun to do the Aussie Rules footy, but I kind of wish I had have stayed at the gym and continued that, because, like you said, what could I have done if I had have stayed there? 10 years at that gym. What could have come of me? So, you don't like saying regrets, but it was something that it would have been interesting to see the difference of me now if I had have stayed there for longer than what I did. But yeah, that's so after that it was just fast forward a bit to adulthood, and that was it wasn't until I did bits and pieces. My wife and I, before we got married, we lived in Canada for a year. I did a lot of running and stayed fit pretty well. Played Aussie football in Canada as well for the Toronto Dingoes, and so that was good fun. But yeah, didn't really get back into the boxing for a while. It was just something that was always there. It was still a passion of mine and an interest of mine, but just never found myself getting back into the gym until 2014. So it took me a long time to get back in. But that was just after we had our kid, our first kid, and I felt like I needed to do something again. And that was what I knew was able to get me fit and have that sort of discipline back into my life. And I felt like maybe I needed that as becoming a dad. So that was 2014. So, and then that was fun. And it was the same kind of environment. It was back into a shed. It was back into a dusty shed in the light industrial area of Karratha. And Shane McDonald's the guy that runs it, Raiders Boxing Club. It's still going strong now, probably stronger than it ever has been. And yeah, it was that that same smell. I walked in there and it was that same smell: leather, sweat, dust, and there was the same kind of looking guys that were at the gym when I rocked up for the first time at 13. So it was a really cool experience to sort of just this is where I need to be.
I'm home.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was fun. He's moved from there now to another place in town, which is a bit more cleaner, but more accessible for people to be able to get to. So it's good now. But yeah, that's where we are now as an adult. Do you want me to talk about? I got to do one amateur fight.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear that, man. Yeah, I'll hear more. Yeah,
it was never a goal of mine. I was just really enjoying being a sparring partner for the guys as a teenager, but also as an adult in this gym. But Shane he's interested. He's interested in helping kids and adults compete or spar as a minimum. He's not interested in boxer size. He doesn't want you to come there and just stand with the doing 1-2 1-2 all day. It's you want to come here, then you spar, or you're looking to compete.
It's a very clear difference. It's very important for people to understand, right? That you're hitting a bag, or you're doing it specifically for fitness. It's not the same thing. It's like right, yep. What you're talking about there.
Exactly. And from the get-go, I was in the ring, and yeah, it was good to get back in there. And I mean, I was so unfit at that stage. I could barely. I finished one 3-minute round, but I'd end up walking out of there with a stitch, and I'd spend the next round just with my hands above my head, just breathing deeply, trying to get back all that oxygen. And yeah, just was completely. It surprised me how unfit I was at that stage. And but again, it was you get back in there and you keep going and you develop those relationships, and it was a really good time to just get myself back into the game kind of thing. And we were doing one session at another gym, and he came up to me and he said, "What do you want to do? You interested in sparring? You're interested in competing?" I was like, "Well, it's funny. I had set myself a goal by the end of 2016. So we're looking at 2 years, I suppose, of training. I wanted to have one amateur fight put in the bag."
You already had that goal in your mind to do that.
Oh yeah, I wanted to take what I knew that I had. I had some skill base. I just needed to get that fitness back up, and I suppose that mental toughness as well. But I felt that I needed to set that goal in order for me to push myself to get to that point. So he was stoked with that. He was like, "Cool, can work with that." Again, he's like, "You've got the height and you've got the reach, and we can get you down to 75 kilos, and you'll be lengths above all the other guys that are in that division." I was like, "All right, cool." So I gave myself 2 years, and I found out that in October of 2015, Shane was going to hold a local boxing tournament, and I didn't know it at the time, but he was prepping me for that. So I thought I was just sparring and stuff, but he was prepping me for that. So I ended up doing, starting off 3 days a week or whatever it was, but eventually ended up going from anywhere from 4 to 6 nights, whether it was at the gym or doing long runs or hill climbs or just things in the backyard at home. So I pushed myself, and I did develop that mental toughness and that drive to continue to grow and be better. The discipline was there, and it consumed me. Everything I did was, every YouTube video I looked at was something to do with boxing, and it was there's a guy, I think his name JT Van, is a
Van V.
boxing. Yeah. I watched him a lot, and there was one trip we went over to Canada that year for visit some relatives, and I got in touch with him and just didn't work out that he was in Toronto at the same time as me. But I was going to tee up a little training session with him. But he's got some really cool videos out there that really show some technique, and I really loved that. Vasyl Lomachenko as well. He was a guy that I just loved the way he can pivot and move and just occupy that space in the ring just to do whatever he wants. And it was
ballet, man. It's just so great.
Yeah. So it was, and then I suppose looking back at some of the old guys as well, George Foreman and that, how he used his jab, and it was I just studied it, and it was not just 4 or 5 days a week of training, it was 7 days a week of study as well. And I don't know, I suppose you probably don't need to do that for your first amateur fight, but I felt like if I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to be the best that I can be at the time. And so I ended up getting registered as an amateur in 2015, and then being accepted as a fighter for that tournament. The fight night was a fun, interesting experience. Going down and doing the weigh-in. I think I was like 100 grams underneath the cutoff, which I was pretty happy with.
Take it.
Yeah. And for my first one, and so I just did everything I could to just really immerse myself in the experience, and got into the ring. It was fun. There was I don't know how many people were there, maybe a couple of hundred or something, but small town stuff. But it was really cool. I was definitely nervous beyond what I thought I would be. I felt like, and I was telling everybody I was calm. It's all good, it's just I'm ready for it. But internally I knew like this is the real deal. I'm right here. That guy right there is he looks actually quite mean, and so I was smiling and excited and enjoying it. And then it wasn't until we got in there, and my first scene was something that JT Van was talked about, was the first round, just jab and feel it out, and so that's what I was doing. And so I won that first round, and then but in that first round I got hit with a good one, and that's when it sort of woke me up and was like, oh, we're not sparring today.
Right.
This is real.
Yes.
This guy's actually out. He's gonna try and hurt me. That's what he's gonna do. And so it was good to have that in the first round. But the second round was a bit different. So the second round was where I think I dominated not dominated, but apparently I won sort of the first half of that second round. And then something just changed, and what I was doing wasn't really working. And towards the end of that second round, I got pinned in the corner and got hit with a flurry of punches, and then got a standing 8 count from the ref, and the ref didn't like what he saw from me and called the fight off with about 10 seconds left of the second round ending. Everyone was a bit disappointed and unsure of what actually happened. But my coach said afterwards, he goes, "You looked a little bit glazy from that encounter." And so that was a bit disappointing. And I still hold that as something that I wish I had I could have done differently maybe. But it was an experience. What I found out afterwards with this guy, and I remember saying they had interviews with us afterwards, and I was like, yeah, I'm really, really happy. It was just fun to get in there. It's my first fight and that. And the guy looked at me who I was fighting, and he's just like shocked. He's like, what? And I found out afterwards he had 10 fights already under his belt, with throwing a couple of cage fights in there as well. So, I definitely don't use that as an excuse or anything like that. But what it made me realize was what having that experience can do. So I was confident after the first round because I felt like I held him off and had a couple of good shots. But for him, with that experience, he knew now what to do. And so the first half of that second round, he was just sort of feeling me out again.
Yeah. And
I didn't realize it at the time. So my confidence was growing, and maybe starting to hear people that I knew that came along and was going, yeah, go Liam, yep. But what I feel like he was doing was just he was just playing the game. He knew more about it, and that's I respect that as far as his ability, and appreciate the I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to get in the ring in a competition style with someone that was that experienced, because they were all a bit disappointed that that's what happened. They didn't know that at the start, and if they had have known that, I probably wouldn't have got a fight. They probably just would have cancelled it. And if I had been put up with someone that was one fight with me, the same level as me, maybe would have gone to full rounds. But would I have got any different of experience than what I've had in the gym sparring? Maybe not.
Right.
So this was I'd take it as I'm really grateful for that experience, because it was fun. It hurt, but I walked out of there and I was happy that I accomplished my goal, a year before the end date. I think I ticked that box. So it was a good experience.
Good man. Let me ask you, because and I know we're getting to the end here, but you talked about getting kind of obsessed with it, right? You're just consumed with your training 7 days a week, and everything that was going through. You had just one child at the time?
One child, yeah, and then the second one was due January 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that like, as far as with the family and with your wife, and was she supportive through this whole thing? Was this was this like, okay, we just gotta, once you're done with this, and we'll have you back, and she was okay with that? What was that process like? Because I mean, you hear a lot as far as like, like fighting, it can be, sometimes it has to be kind of a selfish sport, particularly when you're training for it, like a bout. So what was that like for you guys?
Yeah, 100% support the whole time. From my wife. My parents, again, thought I was crazy. But yeah, 100% support. I was getting, I was in message communication towards the fight as well with Dean. So, we obviously stay in touch, but, we're on the opposite side of the country, so we don't really communicate that much. But leading up to that fight, we communicated quite a lot. I took that as him being, a mentor of mine. But yeah, Alison was 100% supportive. Once it was done though, and I took that time off with her, and we had our second kid in January the following year. I went back sporadically after that. But it just came around recently where there's another fight night in town coming up in April next year. I thought, there's time. There's enough time to sort of maybe get back into it and redeem myself. And I posed it to Alison, and it was one of those things we talked about. Is I just can't commit that amount of time again. And I not necessarily I can't, but maybe I just don't want to as well. With the two kids now, and I've got a new job that I'm really passionate about, and Alison's working on her small business as well, and and our kids are a lot more demanding now, but they want our attention. They want us to teach them and things like that. So, I think my priorities have changed now, where I can't let that kind of selfishness and anything like that consume me for 24/7 again. At this stage, maybe in another 5 years when the boys are old enough to come along with me, right. Maybe we'll go at it again. But yeah, at this stage, it's off the cards. But I'm helping with Shane and his club Raiders up here, introducing them to a lot of organisations, and because they're a not-for-profit boxing club.
Oh, okay.
So they run off funding and sponsorships. So I'm helping him a lot with that. Introducing him to people that can help fund at least some of the kids that come through, because he really enjoys working with youth at risk as well. So that's a big factor for him. So I'm still involved with the club to a point, and I'll help him with setup of this fight night in April whenever it comes around. So I really want to sort of, I suppose, pay it back. That's the way I feel. I've got a lot out of it, as we've uncovered, but now I feel like I can contribute in other ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not so much a punching bag anymore.
That's right. Liam, this was awesome, man. Thank you so much for this. It was great. If people wanted to connect with you through the boxing club, how could they do that? Is there like a website of theirs, or what's just if they wanted to support the club, as you mentioned, is a not-for-profit? How could they do that?
Yeah, he's on Raiders Boxing Club is the name of it, and in Karratha you'll find it. And it's on Facebook. It's probably the best place to find him. Raiders Boxing Club Karratha, and Shane McDonald is his name. So his you can probably find details of him online as well. He used to be a pro heavyweight boxer as well in his day. But yeah, that's probably the best place to start for sure.
That's awesome. Liam, this is awesome. Thanks again, brother. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me on.
Folks, I hope you appreciated that conversation with Liam. I really enjoyed it, learning about the way that he grew up into boxing, being influenced by strong male role models in his life outside of his family. It's not something that you hear about a lot today, and it was great to hear about that. But also his experience jumping into the ring as an adult, having not boxed in years. It was really inspiring to me, and loved that he was able to share his experience, that he was open enough to share his experience all the way through that. So that is it for this episode. This is Philip with the Everyday Fighter Podcast. I'll talk to you next time.